drowning in debt. A global phenomenon? It seems like every time we turn on the news, another country is on the brink of financial collapse. From Europe to South America, and even in the wealthiest nations, financial instability seems to be a recurring theme. Greece, Argentina, even the United States, all burdened by massive debts. These countries, despite their different economic landscapes, share a common struggle: managing national debt. It begs the question, is every country in debt? And if so, why? What are the underlying causes that lead nations into such financial predicaments? The truth is, most countries do carry some level of debt. This debt can be a result of various factors, including economic policies, historical events, and global market dynamics. This might seem alarming at first, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Debt, when managed properly, can be a tool for growth and development. National debt is a complex issue with far-reaching implications. It affects everything from government policies to individual livelihoods. Let's dive in and try to understand this global phenomenon. By examining the causes and effects of national debt, we can gain a clearer picture of its role in the global economy. It's important to understand that countries, unlike individuals, have the unique ability to borrow money on a massive scale. This borrowing is often facilitated by central banks and international financial institutions. They do this for a variety of reasons, from funding infrastructure projects to stimulating economic growth. These investments can lead to improved public services, better infrastructure, and overall economic development. But just like with personal finances, responsible borrowing and spending are crucial for maintaining a healthy financial outlook. Mismanagement of debt can lead to severe consequences, including economic downturns and loss of public trust. As we explore this topic further, we'll look at how different countries manage their debt and what lessons can be learned from their experiences. Understanding these dynamics is key to navigating the complexities of the global financial system. So, what exactly is national debt? It's a term we hear often, but what does it really mean for a country and its citizens? Simply put, it's the total amount of money a country owes to its creditors. This debt accumulates over time, often due to borrowing to cover budget deficits, fund public projects, or respond to economic crises. These creditors can be individuals, businesses, foreign governments, or even international organizations. Each of these entities lends money with the expectation of being repaid with interest. The debt is usually measured as a percentage of the country's gross domestic product, or GDP. This ratio helps to understand the scale of the debt in relation to the country's economic output. GDP represents the total value of goods and services produced within a country's borders in a year. It's a key indicator of economic health and productivity. A high debt-to-GDP ratio can be a cause for concern, as it indicates that a country may have difficulty repaying its debts. This can lead to higher borrowing costs and reduced investor confidence. Think of it like this. If a person earns $50,000 a year and has $100,000 in debt, their debt-to-income ratio is 200%. This is similar to how the debt-to-GDP ratio works for countries. This would be considered very high. High personal debt can lead to financial stress and difficulty in securing additional loans, and the same applies to countries. Similarly, a country with a debt-to-GDP ratio of 150% would be seen as having a significant debt burden. This can impact its credit rating, influence economic policies, and affect the overall economic stability of the nation. How do countries end up in debt in the first place? The answer often lies in government spending. When a government spends more money than it takes in through taxes and other revenues, it runs a budget deficit. To cover this deficit, the government borrows money, adding to the national debt. Over time, these deficits can accumulate, leading to a large and unsustainable debt burden. Imagine a family that consistently spends more than it earns each month, relying on credit cards to make ends meet. While this might be manageable in the short term, it will eventually become unsustainable, leading to mounting debt and potential financial hardship. Who are these lenders that bankroll governments? There are several key players in the world of sovereign debt. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, often provides loans to countries facing economic crises. The World Bank, on the other hand, focuses on funding development projects in developing countries. Other countries, particularly those with strong economies, also lend money to each other. These institutions play a crucial role in the global financial system, providing much-needed financial assistance to countries in need. However, their lending practices have also been subject to criticism, with some arguing that they can trap countries in a cycle of debt and dependence. Section 5. Case Studies, Tales of Debt and Defiance. Let's look at some real-world examples. Japan, for instance, has a debt-to-GDP ratio of over 250%, one of the highest in the world. Despite this, Japan has managed to maintain a relatively stable economy. This is partly due to the fact that most of its debt is held domestically, meaning it owes money to its own citizens rather than foreign creditors. On the other hand, Greece faced a severe debt crisis in the 2010s. Its debt-to-GDP ratio soared, and it struggled to make payments on its loans. This led to a series of bailouts from the IMF and the European Union, with strict austerity measures imposed on the country. Section 6. The debt burden weighing down economies. High levels of national debt can have significant implications for a country's economy. For starters, it can lead to higher interest rates. When a country has a lot of debt, lenders perceive it as a riskier borrower and demand higher interest rates to compensate for that risk. This can make it more expensive for the government to borrow money, further exacerbating the debt problem. Moreover, a large debt burden can crowd out private investment. This is because government borrowing can drive up interest rates, making it more expensive for businesses and individuals to borrow money for investment and consumption. Section 7. Living on Credit, the Citizen's Perspective. The impact of national debt is not limited to abstract economic indicators. It also affects the lives of everyday citizens. From the bustling streets of the city to the quiet corners of rural areas, the consequences are felt far and wide. When a government is struggling with debt, it may be forced to make difficult choices, such as cutting public services or raising taxes. These decisions are not made lightly, but they are often necessary to balance the budget and manage the debt. These measures can have a direct impact on people's lives, potentially leading to reduced access to healthcare, education, and social safety nets. Long lines in hospitals, overcrowded classrooms, and increased reliance on food banks are just a few of the visible signs of these cuts. Furthermore, high levels of debt can contribute to inflation. As prices rise, the cost of living increases, making it more difficult for families to afford everyday essentials. When a government prints more money to pay off its debts, it can devalue the currency, leading to a rise in prices for goods and services. This process, known as inflation, can spiral out of control if not managed properly. This can erode the purchasing power of citizens' savings and wages, making it harder to afford basic necessities. Over time, the value of money diminishes, and people find themselves struggling to keep up with the rising costs of living. The impact of national debt is far-reaching, touching every aspect of daily life. Section 8. The Debt Collectors. Who owns the world's IOUs? Who exactly are the creditors holding these massive debts? The answer varies from country to country. In some cases, a significant portion of the debt may be held domestically by citizens, banks, and pension funds. In other cases, foreign governments, international organizations, and private investors may hold a larger share. The ownership structure of a country's debt can have important implications for its economic and political stability. For example, if a large portion of a country's debt is held by foreign creditors, it may be more vulnerable to external economic shocks or pressure from those creditors. Section 9. Navigating the Debt Maze, a Balancing Act. National debt is a complex issue with no easy answers. While it's important for countries to manage their debt levels responsibly, it's also crucial to recognize that not all debt is created equal. Some debt, such as that used to finance investments in education, infrastructure, or research and development, can have a positive impact on economic growth in the long run. The key lies in finding the right balance between responsible borrowing and fiscal prudence. This requires careful planning, transparency, and a commitment to long-term economic sustainability. By making informed decisions about spending, revenue generation, and debt management, countries can navigate the complex world of sovereign debt and strive for a more prosperous future.